everyone, it's Mike here. I'm one of the co-hosts for Two Sides of the Same Convo. I'm here with Dennis, my other co-host.
What's up?
And this is a conversation about two people who have two different perspectives. And this is kind of like the discussion that we're having. And we're hopefully going to have some guests who are also going to be joining that conversation. But, you know, from our unique backgrounds, both being biracial, we're hoping that you'll find something unique that other commentators just don't have, because they don't simply have the lived experience that we have that will allow us to kind of see things differently from the different, if you will, racial backgrounds that we have.
That's right. Welcome back. So last week,
You're good.
oh, no, I think so we should, what was your reaction to last week? So last week I didn't get to watch the whole thing through.
Of
the first episode, so to speak.
Oh, the first reaction, the first episode.
Yeah. What was your?
I think that we had a lot of good discussion. It was definitely much more of a personal narrative, and I think in this episode we should go and broaden it to have like a wider discussion about maybe something that's more, I don't want to say pertinent, but definitely more relatable to other people who haven't had our lived experience.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any ideas that come to mind.
No, I feel like you do.
Well, so the thing that's at the top of my mind is obviously what's happening in the news, and I don't know if that's a discussion you want to have, but we can go in that direction.
What's happening in the news?
So there was a commentator, podcaster himself, who was depending on who you talk to, you could be a very divisive person, or you could be a very, open to having honest debate, at least from his perspective, where he wanted to engage with people who will typically, once again, from his perspective, have a lot of disagreement. And unfortunately, somebody unwisely decided to take his life. And as a result, there's been a lot of people who, for better or for worse, either agree with what he had to say and feel that it's terrible that his life was taken. And then there's another group of people who obviously still feel bad his life was taken, but don't agree with the things he had to say. And at least the point for me where I am at with this whole conversation is you really need to be careful about the things you say while you're living, because unfortunately it could transcend into an end result that you may not want. And in this case of this particular individual that I'm not going to name, he actually said in his own words that, in a sense, violence is okay, especially gun violence. And I don't know if the person who did the shooting took his words to heart, but what do you think about that?
What do I think about what?
What do you think about people being mindful about the things they say while they're living, and, if you will, having those same words possibly being, for better or for worse, used against them in their passing as a way of people judging who they were overall? Like, if judging their outcome with respect to what they said, like, is it deserved, if you will?
I think the intersection of that problem is how I look at it. And when I say the problem, I'm not saying the individual or any individual. I'm talking about, we're advancing as a culture, right? So you have social media. You have people that live every day on social media, and they live more on the internet than they do in real life. And I think that's just a new intersection. I remember when I was young, they had this scary movie by what's his name?
Stephen King.
Stephen King. And it was like the guy was in a virtual world, and the virtual world became like reality. I can't remember. I was too young. I shouldn't even been watching it, but it's resonating now with your point. I look beyond like an individual, and I don't do it to duck, right? Like I'm not ducking the question. I've learned through experience engaging with people and not understanding the impact of the internet and the difference between people that live one way on the internet and love one way in real life, that's a dangerous intersection. And I've seen that, and I don't know this guy. So I know, like what you're saying, the media perception of him, but I know that like what we're doing here, you're seeing an hour of us. So that's a snapshot of who a person really is. And especially like when you have the weapon of creating media for people that don't understand its impact. Like I could say something radical right now, right, and it would be clickbait.
Sure.
Right, because there's people that are fiending like heroin, and I know addiction. I grew up in addiction, so pills, heroin, drugs, weed, pornography, food. Like when people think of addiction, I think they think of the first things I've said. They're not thinking of the wider array. And there are people that are addicted to there's Fox people, there's liberal people. I watch both that like they cannot wait for that next breaking story to feed their narcissistic but so there's all of that. And that like I stay away from all of that because I prioritize my family. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's an unhealthy practice for me. Now I have to get that out of the way. Now there's people that are on the internet seeing the power of connecting and collaborating to move things forward. For those people, work is energy. So if you're giving all your energy towards reacting to things that make you feel offended, right? Is that the best place for your energy? Maybe for a season, I would say, because I went through it. I went through a season where I was like, how could he do this, right? But then you're like, I still got to feed I still got to adjust and accept the reality and figure out a way to move forward the best way I can. So the point that I'm all getting to is why I don't, and I've said this, I don't speak on people people that have loved that person have had the opportunity to grieve. I think that's a humanistic thing that I would want for my children. And I live a very provocative life where someone could look at my views and really, paint a target out of me. So having that living in my space, I mean, if my life was ever gone, people are like, oh, what would he want if he died? Maybe for his family to grieve, right? And process. And this is the thing. Whoever he was or he was not is going to be shown now through time. Who does his children become? Who does his wife become? He moved in a way that whatever you feel, there was a consequence for the way he lived his life. I feel it's inappropriate for me to say if the moral premise of his situation, because I didn't know him.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like I clearly learned about this guy through the news and the notice of his death and the reaction to people that I care about that know him. But this is the thing, like I could only watch that 2 or 3 times because I just don't like seeing death to anybody. Yeah, who wants to see someone go through that, So there's that. But at the end of the day, this is too, right? Like this also points to me, and I'm talking too much. Like some of the stuff we're going to have to take down.
Well, if you don't mind me interjecting, because there's one thing that you said that I think maybe needs to be explored a bit more, because you were talking about the different obsessions that people have. One of them being just their obsession to news content, news media. But one of the things that sort of concerns me about I guess some of the people who are following him and seem to like what he says, or at least like the idea that he's being able to say whatever he wants to say, is that there's this other element where there seems to be some people who are obsessed with the idea of violence. Because like one of the things that we hear is kind of like a consequence of the rhetoric, or at least I'm hearing because I'm still paying attention to this stuff. Some people are calling for war, right? They're calling for war, they're calling for violence, they're calling for attacking a certain group of people who they feel caused this to happen, which it seems right now that it actually, I don't want to make this political, but the political side that was originally blamed is apparently not the right side, and it's actually the far extreme of the side that this individual supported is actually supposedly the cause of it, and that's a whole nother animal. But like, I know you're like saying like, you know, you're as a family member, and I'm one too. Like, you know, we want to think about and concern ourselves with trying to make sure we do what's best to move forward so we keep our family safe and secure. But then when you hear all these talks about these individuals who want to cause harm to people who they perceive to be a threat, I mean, I find that to be concerning. I don't even know how to navigate that, because in my mind, I don't think like that, right? I'm not trying to harm anyone else. Like literally, just like you, I'm just like, I just want to make sure my kids are taken care of, right? I want to make sure they're all fed. But
Yeah.
but then do we have to take a serious look at ourselves and saying, hey, there is unfortunately a decent number of people who do want to cause us harm? Do we have to step a little bit into their zone for our own safety and protection?
No, I think if you're me, and this is what I did, all right? So with George Floyd happened, I felt unsafe, you know, but I had also through community work been building a relationship with law enforcement, in the sense where I was working as a residential counselor with young people who, if you understand crime and violence and you really are scared, you should focus on young people, because the numbers show us that's where it happens. Most violent crimes are between the ages of 16 and 24. Then you could get into the brain science, where people think, you know, that a lot of that is attributed that the brain doesn't fully develop till 22 years old. So if you're really looking at being afraid of violence, you have to study the numbers, which the police, who responds to violent calls, and they're just a margin of their response is stuff that you can measure because someone called. How much crime happens that isn't called? Mm-hmm. How much victimization happens that never goes through the police? So you have to understand all of that, like education, if you're going to make an informed decision in a place that's going to impact a high leader. Because a high leader learns all of that and the coordination of all of these systems, mm-hmm. because there's separated communities that all ask for equity and justice from this system.
Yeah.
So I've had that experience, which a lot of people don't have. A lot of people from our community can't even fathom. And I'm not saying that to elevate myself. I'm saying that's how I look at these things. Like, we're all gonna die. All right. Some people can't even have that dialogue. Like their positions and what they talk about is in a framework that's not. It's not even. You can't even implement it. Like a utopia society. What are you going to do for people that have mental acuity to the point where their whole existence is surrounded on tormenting others?
If you don't mind me interjecting, yeah. So like when you're saying like their mind's not developed to be able to think kind of like in that bigger world where, you know, I guess they could find security, right? Are you suggesting that's only through that 18 to 24 that you were talking about?
No, everything is a spectrum, and everything has a guardrail, right? So like if they're between, that's where the numbers, like if you look, person shot over here, especially in the inner cities and all that stuff, you're not seeing 30, 40, 50-year-old people do that. Most of the shootings happen for young, homeless youth that are kicked out, have nothing to do. Clearly, they've had all these images of violence, and the Cinderella story turned into a robbery, right? In some communities.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not even putting a color on it. I'm just saying when you're poor, people are going to think of creative ways to do stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and definitely I would say it wouldn't be accurate to just put a color on it, because in the case of this whole conversation, the alleged shooter, I should say, is 22. So just, to your point, and statistically, most shootings are between, like, by people who are around that age frame. Of course, when we think about mass shootings, though, it's not, we're not thinking about people of color. If you're thinking about accuracy, statistically, 98% of the people who do mass shootings are white males from pretty secure neighborhoods who are usually
Now, can I
resources.
stop you?
Sure.
So ultimately, my goal would be for people that are value centered, regardless of race, to come together and kind of create terms of existence for the people that are not going to come. So that's how I look at, like, when you're talking about, like, there's this group that's saying this and there's this group that's saying that.
Yeah.
Clearly there's black people that have disassociated themselves with white culture and are so harmed from white culture they don't even put milk in their coffee, right? And vice versa.
Yeah.
There's white people that are on the same opposite spectrum.
Yeah.
And what I find is that where they're the same is it's usually harm. It's usually some harm that they couldn't get over, that they just quickly, put a package on it, and that's how they move. Now, some people die that way. We know that. Like, I think we all have family, or we all see people in the community that will not be moved from their position until they die. Now, I think that's the job of the leader. The job of the leader in the community is to recognize where some people are and still say they have the right to exist. So I understand people, because I think the argument of most white people that are speaking about this guy's narrative, and I'm assuming, right? Like I don't know this guy.
Right.
I wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't for you. Right?
Yeah.
But I'm talking about it because I care about, and so anyways, but my whole point is, if I'm forced to talk about it, the deeper threat of this issue is a man raises his child to be a certain way. And the way he raises his child leads to a person's death. That's provocative.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like, to me, like when you're dealing with grief, and I've been at the precipice of people dealing with grief, those are the moments where you think about doing the worst things you could possibly do. So the gracious thing as a person that I find is allow the grief to happen, allow process to happen for people, which is a reality. And hopefully, you create an invitation to some type of a process that could lead to a better future. But that's going to take time, man. Like, thinking you're going to put out a video.
So I hear what you're saying, and one thing that's sort of struck me about it is that it seems, at least to what you're describing about finding like a leader, I would assume like a community leader, right? And getting people together so they can find that, if you will, like, if I remember correctly how you said, finding a place where they can be acknowledged and know that they exist, right? Is that how you were saying it?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason why I say it sounds like it was centered within a city is because you could find like a community center, right, where you could find a community leader, and that person can bring a bunch of people together. And even if you don't find all the right people, those people who are attending can hopefully branch out, and they will almost act like their own leaders to find their own community circles and kind of spread the message, right? But when I think of like some like suburban or even in my case where I live is technically a little bit rural, right? Everything's really segmented, even though population wise, it's like a fraction of like any given city. And you think of like community leaders, they're like the way this, like my community structured, there is no true community leader. Like in a city, you could say, okay, your leader, your de facto leader is your mayor. Where I live, there is no mayor. You could make a slim argument that maybe the town administrator or the chair of the selectmen is that leader. But even then, the way, and maybe this is even just unique to like New Hampshire, maybe not, but they're not even really leaders. They're more like organizational people for those governing bodies, right? So then how do you make it all work if you don't have an actual community place to go to?
Well, you just said it. You said the word. How do you make it all work? Work is the answer. People don't, I don't think that. Like, they don't get that. What sustains a larger community is agreement. So people decide we're going to build a bridge, not now, but before. Building a bridge, that was it. That was what you did with your life.
Right.
You built the bridge, and then, you were able to provide for your family from the bridge. Now where workforce and development are much larger, to create a 20-year plan, which you really got to start looking at time, right? Like, you're only going to have 20 to 40 years of product time to have an impact. And how you spend that time is something you can't duck. When the 40 years is done, you're left with what you did with that time. Now, from that, I've seen that alters people. Because some people wake up and like, oh my God, I've wasted my whole life. Right? And you just don't realize. Or some people see a certain place they got and they elevate. But ultimately, like, looking at yourself is the way, in creating work is the way for people to collaborate. But once you get people agreeing to work, the culture that needs to be established for people to work, right? That's what lingers a lot of time, right? And that's where the power dynamics and let's replace them and we'll get new people. So that's like where all this stuff is seated. And I think people just exploit the death of a guy like this. That's why I don't get involved in it. That's why I don't talk about it, because it's like, ultimately that dude has a kid, and at Christmas, every day, the thought of his father, he's going to have to live with that thorn in his side.
Yeah.
So I'm on the side of freedom for the victims, and anyone in that community, because what I think people don't understand with any individual, there's people that just love a person and don't get involved. Like, hey, yeah, he's a little like that, but I know him from his mom. And so for all of that, for those people that have to see that, now you're in a place of pressure. Now, did not leaning in, you're in this grieving process. So for respect for everyone that's going through that process, because I've personally gone through these processes in my life, I have a line where I'm just like, you know what? It doesn't really matter, because the other thing is this. Look at elections, right? How many people are online hooting and hollering? And then how many people actually take action? For a lot of people, right, people say, oh, so many people feel this way, right? Yeah, a lot of people feel worth pushing a button on their phone while they're doing whatever they're doing, but they're really not altering their life to make an impact or a difference. So I have that lens because I've watched my wife run for city council for a long time. And it wasn't about mobilizing a new voter base. It was about getting the voter base that existed to believe she was trustworthy. There were some new people that got in the process, but not enough to get her in. Right? So that's another learned experience that a lot of people don't have. I think, in the core, and I'm gonna stop because I'm going on a rant. The core of what I think, like, you're highlighting for me, is how our school systems need to transform. And what I mean is, people are not prepared for what we're living in right now. They don't have what I'm talking about, the weights and scales to measure their decision I think in a comprehensive way, understanding like how real it is. Like the things I'm talking about, if you're not weighing these things when you're making decision, you could die any day. You know that. Like the Kirk dude, I said to people, like, even forget him. It's not what you say, it's where you say it. I know this kid that did a racialized joke, right? And we were in a union job. Right? And I said, he was like, what do you think of that? I was like, go say that same joke in Mass and Cass. And it changed that ain't funny.
Yeah.
But that's my point. It's where you say the joke. So a joke can be funny behind the walls of safety.
Sure.
But like if you're out there in the South, and that's the other thing that we gotta be careful of here. Culture up here is different than the South, still.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's different in a lot of places, right? Like, even over like the East Coast is different from the West Coast. Heck, even though like, if you've ever been to Canada, for example, Canada can be very similar to America, but they think different. But I think one of the takeaways that I'm thinking of, as you know, we're kind of like getting close to wrapping up here.
That's crazy.
Is that you were saying that in the kind of like this moment of grievance, like we should just kind of like leave things alone. I think that probably is the most logical outcome to all of this. Like for all the people who are looking at this, I don't want to say necessarily political. I think they're looking at from a moral standpoint, from their point of view, is that they feel, regardless of what he was saying whatever he was saying, it should have been free from violence. It shouldn't have resulted that way. Like he should be able to say what he wants to say, regardless of the message. I can understand that. I can take that for what it is and walk away from it and say, okay, fine. I do still find it hard to disassociate what has been said by him in light of even what happened to him. But I understand for the greater good of society, we should all, for the collective good, just leave it alone. I think it's horrible how people have been exploiting it for their own purposes. And I mean, one of the kind of like a small tangent, one of the things that I thought was kind of disgusting from his wife, and this is true, you can verify this, she charged people money to watch the live stream of the funeral. I think that's probably one of the most despicable things anyone could possibly do in that particular moment. Because for me, like certain things, like in the death of somebody's father, or in this case, your spouse, like that's a personal thing. Like that should have been private. It shouldn't have been put out there. And that's just my personal thought. I know there's some people that say, no, we all need to see it. We all need to be part of that. It's not just her and the kids. It's everyone. You know, people had thoughts and feelings about the situation, and they want to have that closure.
I mean, what a space for someone like that to be in, right? You wake up, you go to an event, you know your loved one is risque or whatever, but I think it's complex. Like I've seen you see enough of the clips that I've seen of him. He was a religious person, right? So he was a religious person, and he clearly said some stuff that was just provocative at the very least, and at the very most directly offensive to a history of people that clearly, from watching him, didn't seem like a very diverse person with class. So I don't know. Maybe he was in impoverished communities or poverty-stricken areas, and understood how those are redlined and why those exist, and all the nuance of that community that is a life work of many people. So, but my whole point is, from that is what I see. I see a fight way above my experience. Like the way, like I saw him in a car with Candace Owens and they were all singing together. It reminds me of culture out here, where you have people from many different races. And, you know, I grew up with hearing white dudes use the N-word in a way that wasn't derogatory. Like they were culture fans and whatever. So that's what it seems like. I never seen that exist in that context. I've only seen it in the context of the community I lived in.
Right.
So that's where I'm kind of basing my opinions off of, right, my lived experience of interracial relationships. And it's funky, man. But my whole point is, he didn't seem like he had a couple clips with people, but a lot of his positions didn't seem informed from experience.
Yeah, so I think we'll put in a pin right there. We'll fortunately never get to know what he did or did not know because he didn't get to live, if you will, a full life.
And that's what's the most saddest to me. Like to me, you've created now with this dude dying, right? Like people, like he's not the perfect representation for some guy trying to teach a young kid that there's a race problem and you need, so here you go. This is the perfect recruiting tool for anyone. But if you understand harm, right, and you look deeper than just the name of this guy, understand that people are going to get bullied by bad people. And bad people come in all colors and sizes. So when you give a on-ramp to hurt people, hurt people, you keep the problem going.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm not for that. Because, and the other thing though that I will say is like, because people treat me like I'm scared, right? Like, listen, I'm not scared. I can go 0 to 60 for the rest of my life. But the truth is, people that haven't, those are the first people. And that's back to my point. A lot of people are on the social media because that's where they're getting their aggression out.
Right.
They make a post and they think, I've done my duty. It's a privilege to have a phone for me in my later life. So for me, like I've actually had to be out there fighting with other people. And I know those guys that fight, I feel like from that side, and they're more like me. Like no one's trying to get into no beef over words and different stuff. But there are some people with mental health that are definitely probably going to be sucked in.
Yeah. So, yeah, I definitely agree. And with that said, we're gonna close it out. Dennis, it's a pleasure talking about this. I think we need to maybe on our own maybe help the world identify more community leaders out there, so maybe we can help in our own way mitigate this problem. But until then, we'll have another conversation. There'll be two sides of a different convo, or it'll be birational. We'll figure it out.
Figure the name out.
Figure it out. All right.
Figure the name out. All right.
All right.